because it was designed as a console, as you see it now, with the thing that goes up and down in the middle, which I suggest looks very nice indeed. I mean, this gives the effect with the sound over of something going on, and every Doctor Who could come here and press buttons and say, I've got my sonic screwdriver and we're going into overdrive. But of course, what the problems we had was, in actual fact, trying to fit it together in the studio and indeed storing it. So it was made originally in two halves, so that these would pull apart and we had the bit going up in the middle. And you only had to move one of these parts and the thing jammed solid. And I came into the studio one day and there was a man actually sitting on it. He'd got his, doing this. And I thought, well, that's a bit cheeky. I've spent hours trying to get this thing working. When I came round, it was Bill Hartnell and he was rehearsing his lines. I thought, well, it's Bill Hartnell's console and it's his TARDIS, so he can look after it, so I left the studio. That, I think, was the beginning of the sonic screwdriver, the thing that put everything right. Push. Sorry, you went off too late, Ian. One more time.
Hey everybody, welcome to From the Archive, a British television live chat. My name is Greg Bakken, and we're going to be talking today about Quatermass. When we started these back up in January, I did ask a lot of people, what is it that you want to hear about? What are different shows you want to hear about? And either I'm going to bring in guests, or we're going to just have a conversation, or I'm just going to say what's on my mind. And one of the things that people brought up was Quatermass. Now, not to be confused, I know that a lot of you had watched last month, and we had Tim Disney on. And I said the next one is going to be with Jazz Wiseman for the Avengers, and that's still going to happen. That's on April 2nd. That timing hasn't changed, but I really wanted to do something for March because I do enjoy doing these. I enjoy having these conversations and having any one of you who want to take part to join in the conversation and say whatever you like. If you're wondering what that was at the beginning of this broadcast, that was obviously Bernard Wilkie, Jack Kinney, and this was recorded over at Lime Grove Studio. Now, this is the same session that ultimately, I believe, was used for the Quatermass Extra Making Demons. So that's why I wanted to include it. It's also really nice. There's a lot of footage from that has not been included, to my knowledge, anywhere as of yet. So that's just a matter of time before we see more of that. I'm sure in one of the many Doctor Who sets that are coming out over the next 3 years, I'm sure we will see that. But I want to focus on Quatermass. This is more of a casual conversation today. There's a couple things that I want to point out that I personally found very interesting. But when I ask questions, and I have a couple gentlemen here with me that we're going to have a conversation with, when I ask these questions to them, it's also for you to answer too. If you want to put your comment into wherever you're watching from, I am broadcasting from my own personal Facebook page. I am also over at Kaleidoscope From the Archive. I'm also on From the Archive YouTube, and I'm also on From the Archive Twitter, as well as Kaleidoscope Twitter. So all these places, if you have a comment, please leave it for me, and we will put it up. So let's see here. Just going through some of the stuff that is through here. First of all, Ian, thank you for joining us. What about an Adam Adamant Lives? Gerald Harper and Juliet Harmer are both still around, thankfully. They are. Juliet actually didn't, I wanted her for the podcast and she didn't want to do it. She doesn't really like talking about it a whole lot for some reason. And I'm, so, there's certainly, I can ask about that again, but we have asked before, not so much Gerald, but maybe we could. because that's one thing I'd love to do is bring someone like that on for everyone to have a opportunity to ask a question or something. So I'll take a look into that and see. Thank you so very much. I do enjoy them as well, and I hope that all of you enjoy it as well too. So like I said, we're going to be talking about Quatermass. Going to talk about some of our favorite things. Also like to talk about restoration, recording, just some of the stuff that we just I really like about the serials. I'll be honest, I'm probably going to focus more on the 350s serials, maybe a little bit on the 1979 miniseries. I have not seen the 2005 live production, so I really cannot comment on that. But if those of you out there find that to be a personal favorite, then feel free to tell us about it. That's totally fine. I'm going to introduce the folks that are going to be with me for the next however long we talk. And that is going to be, of course, Mr. Mike Rogers, who is in his Who cave. And then Mr. Robert Franks, which is not too terribly far from me. How are you all doing today?
Really good.
Yeah, doing very fine.
Good. Now, I did notice, because I could see the numbers of people watching. When I introduced you, Mike, the numbers did go down substantially.
Hey,
and I'm sure that was just a coincidence, of course. That's
my mom will be logging in any moment, so you can see those numbers start to pop back up again.
Right. My mommy likes me. Good. Well, let's get started. First of all, for those of you who are not, I mean, I can't imagine anyone who's watching is not familiar with Quatermass in any of its forms. Quatermass being such a big part of BBC television, starting in 1953 with the first of the serials, Quatermass Experiment, then Quatermass II, then Quatermass in the Pit. I mean, as far as me being a Doctor Who fan, because honestly, I think most of us in the U.S., our love for any British television probably comes rooted from watching Doctor Who. Am I off on this?
Not with either of us, I don't think.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, we learn with Doctor Who, and then we start to branch out into other things, other British shows, and that. As a matter of fact, I think I recall, the same, in the U.S. there was and you know more about it, Greg, that really poor video copy of Quatermass in the Pit that was available for a while, and I think I found it at the same time that I found VHSs of early Avengers. My first Kathy Gale one, the one with Great Dane, and they were in the same bin at the mall, and I bought them at the same time.
I think this is it right here.
Yeah, I think so.
Not your exact copy, mind you, but it's I mean, that was it for me too. But I also feel like too, because of especially for me, like DWB, because DWB seemed to talk a lot more about programs that were not Doctor Who. They did have a lot of different sort of things that just made me wonder what are some of these other things they're talking about. When they talked about stuff like Doomwatch, Survivors, A for Andromeda, and then of course Quatermass. Those were really good. And obviously, like the stuff that we see on here, like I don't know if you can see, folks, but we all know this photo. We all know this photo. That was like the photo that's always associated with Quatermass in the Pit, and that was for me extremely interesting. It looked very, very cool, and I really wanted to see it. And these things were, for me at least, they were impossible to find.
Mm-hmm. Greg, do you know when that VHS was released of Quatermass in the Pit?
See if they put it. This has the copyright date of 1996 on it.
Okay, interesting. Well, because it got me thinking too. I had a Doctor Who friend send me a copy of Quatermass in the Pit, and I could swear, although time being what it is, I could swear it was like the late 80s. I think I was still in high school at that point, and I managed to see the 2-part edited version, and didn't really have the background knowledge to understand like the influence that actually had, how it predated Doctor Who. But as you said, it was literally like handed to me through the Doctor Who, tape trading network, and that's how I first stumbled on it.
I want to say,
I was just going to say also, the fact I think there was another version that was available previous to that, because I remember getting it a lot sooner than that, before that. But I was going to say, it struck me because I didn't really recognize it. I had seen, is it what, 5 million years to Earth?
5 million years to Earth.
Yeah, before I had known what Quatermass was. And then when I saw the video, I was like, this is strangely familiar. And didn't see the other Quatermass films until much later. But yeah.
And I'm going to say, Mike, I think you did get it beforehand, because I recall getting, because I got all of my like Hartnell, Troughton, Pertwee episodics from you back in the tape trading days. And I remember at the end of the tape, there was something that I couldn't really understand what it was, like it was kind of taped over. And I think years later, because what I really saw it around 96, 97 for my first time seeing the actual full serial, that it was very much the same thing, that there was something that looked very familiar, and I knew I got it from you. So I mean, as we know, this stuff gets out really early on. I mean, we know, like our friend Kathy had, I think, episodes of Ace of Wands and Stone tapes and stuff like that long, long, long before, it became in circulation. So yeah, I mean, it's very, very much so. I mean, there was a website back in, I think you could still find it, but I found it in 96 or so. And it was all about all the Quatermass serials. And I was just, my mouth was watering reading it, because it just sounded so amazing. And of course, being the fan I am, and a lot of people did this to me, I reached out to him, and I'm just like, can I get a copy of those, please? And, he never responded, of course, and rightly so. And as Mr. Brunt is obviously very correct on this, the release of Quatermass in the Pit in the UK was in 1988. It also, and we'll talk more about that too, that it was also put together by Rudolph Cartier himself. He supervised it, and he put an intermission between the first 3 and the last 3 episodes. Thus is why, when whatever this homemade thing was that came out over here through Nostalgia Family Video, that sounds pretty legit. That's why they put it over to 2 tapes, and they did not include the interlude then at that point. So
I figured you got enough intermission, like hitting the button on the VCR, waiting for the tape to come out, sticking another one in, waiting for it to load, hitting the play button, waiting for that to whir up, and oh my gosh, finally, it's 5 minutes later, it's playing the second part.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if that might have been the source of the recording that I ultimately saw, because at the time, well, and you guys know, with tape trading, every time you made a copy, the quality would degrade considerably, and I was struck by how good that looked at the time. Because most of the Hartnell and Troughton stuff that we were trading didn't look that good because it had been copied multiple times. So I kind of wonder if maybe that somehow had been purchased and then traded around, perhaps illegally.
But who would do such a thing? Don't you think? I want to say though, whatever you had given me was a camera copy.
Well, it could have been, but like I said, my memory is kind of scratchy. My recollection was that it looked pretty good, which surprised me. Just because normally things getting traded around didn't look that good, but my memory cheats more than the average memory, I think.
Right.
So
right.
I trust your recollection better.
Oh, well, I could be, because it wasn't the whole thing anyway. It was just a little bit of it. Quatermass Experiment was probably, well, I mean, we had copies of that for a while, the first 2 episodes, and I remember getting copies from Robert. They looked, good for the time that we were getting stuff, and it was really nice. But I wonder if because, for example, for myself, that's probably the 3rd favorite of the 3 serials, and only really because we don't have anything that exists for the last 4 episodes. We have scripts, which on the discs that they're included on, they're hard for me to read. I'm not a big fan of the film version at all, to be honest. But I wonder the serial, if it existed in full, if my love for it would really have taken a big jump from that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if I recall, the first series or serial was broadcast live. Is that correct? So that we're lucky even to have
they all were broadcast live.
Yeah.
Just telerecording had moved on by that point. It was fairly experimental in '53 with the first one, which is why they didn't finish telerecording them. I noticed that we've by default made John Mills always come in fourth.
It does. One thing also, which I am thrilled that I was able to do this, and this is a little bit of yay Greg moment, was that that Quatermass Experiment was broadcast live from Alexandra Palace. And I've had the fortune of getting 2 tours there by people who work there, where I went up to the BBC studios. And so I was able to be where Quatermass Experiment was broadcast from. And these are just a couple of hundreds of pictures I took. And I'm hoping to have a woman by the name of Kirsten Forrest come on here at some point so we could talk about Alexandra Palace. She works for Alexandra Palace, and she wants to do stuff with us because it's the centenary of the BBC. She wants to be able to, tie this in, because I think Alexandra Palace, as it stands now, as far as the BBC's heritage, is really looked over quite a bit. And you think about places like Lime Grove also, that doesn't exist anymore. BBC Television Center technically really doesn't exist anymore. So, it's like all these wonderful things, and I'm switching gears on this, but I do wonder how much of that past are we even going to be able to see in any sort of celebratory way for the centenary? And that's a shame, because I think I know the answer, to be honest.
Well, there probably won't be a new Quatermass serial for the centenary.
Okay, that's interesting that you say that, because I think that with all the stuff that's being made, I think a Quatermass series, TV series, that takes place. I mean, we've heard about ideas like this before that like took place during like the Second World War, takes place in the 50s, make it contemporary with the serials. I think you could do something that would be really, really interesting and really fun. But because I think Quatermass as a property still has merit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So
it would just be whether or not, I think the question would be whether or not it would be better as like you say, as a period piece, or something updated with something similar to Sherlock.
Mm-hmm.
And there's merits to both styles, I would think. But yeah, it depends on who they get as a creative team to how well it might be pulled off.
Right. Were you going to say something, Mike?
No.
Good.
I have nothing witty or erudite to add at the moment.
Erudite. Wow. I got to look that one up.
I got my phone, so I've been Googling big words here for today.
Let me get to some comments here real fast. Ian has an interesting question, which I'd love your opinions on. Does Quatermass work better in monochrome than color?
I don't necessarily think that really plays into it. I think that the story is what's going to differentiate it. Now, of course, I think in order to be successful with a modern audience, the tempo and style of the production would need to be updated more so. It would have nothing to do with it, I think, with whether it be in black and white or color. It would be more about, obviously, today's television production is a lot more very quick paced. It's like, it's trying to compare like, a new episode of Doctor Who to what, well, even if you compare something from season 13 to something in season 1 of the new series, you can tell that the tempo production has changed, and just that's just what audiences expect now. So
I find my brain too, and I do this with black and white Doctor Who in particular as well. When I'm watching some really old archive television like Quatermass, part of my brain is enjoying it for the story, but part of it is just like marveling at the accomplishment, of just how primitive broadcast television was at the time, what they were able to achieve. And so, part of my brain is just like enjoying the technical aspect of watching how they're pulling it off. So, I find that it's kind of difficult to separate that and to really like, analyze them just solely on their stories themselves, because it all just kind of mixes together in the experience.
I find for myself, I could never imagine the television version of Quatermass in the Pit being in color. I think that the use of shadows, the use of that creates the imagery, like when Quatermass and the police officer is in the house and they're hearing sounds, and he's, one thing that Neil is so amazing at is the look over there. Did you see that figure? And that's always off camera. But it's enough it's almost like radio for the eyes in a sense, they kind of direct you and stuff. And the stuff like in the spaceship, when we get to the end of the third episode and the Martians are in there, that to me, I don't want to see that in color. To me, it's perfection. And I think that might be why I dislike the Hammer film. I don't dislike it, but I don't prefer it over the television version. I find that to be, it just doesn't work for me. I actually think from start to finish of Quatermass in the Pit, I think to me that's almost television perfection for me. I just absolutely love it.
I prefer a lot of things about the movie more so. But again, it has to do with the fact that I saw the movie first, so maybe there's some bit of it's nostalgia for me that more so. But yeah, no, even the scene that you're talking about with the aliens, I think their the reveal in the movie is perfect, just like you think that the black and white, the television version is. So yeah.
So I have not seen any of the Quatermass films. So my question for you guys and for anyone watching too is, if someone like in my position who really loves and enjoys the series and the serials, is it worth my time to go and watch the films, or will I be let down because of that experience? So would you recommend, for example, that I go out and maybe get them on a special Amazon deal sort of a thing? Or should I avoid? I'm curious. What's my next purchase going to be here?
I personally think that it's always worth your time. That they're really good. I have a controversial opinion that my favorite Quatermass film is Quatermass II, and I don't mind Brian Dunleavy like everyone else is. Maybe because I'm American, it doesn't bother me as much. I understand why it would bother people. Like I said, the first Quatermass film, Quatermass Experiment, I do not care for very much, but I love the second one. And Quatermass in the Pit is really good. What I do like about Quatermass in the Pit is that it really has a strong 1960s vibe to it, which I think is really nice, and it really sets the other films apart. They're not like they are different enough from the TV versions that I think makes it worthwhile.
I'll say something actually controversial about that. I like the movie version of Quatermass in the Pit much better, because to me, and again, I saw the television version much later, but to me, Quatermass in the Pit with Andre Morel is the movie version is Quatermass in the Pit, where when I watch the TV version, I can't help feeling that it's actually Rooney in the pit. Because Professor Rooney has a more prominent role for much of it than Quatermass does. And even though the character exists in the film too, Quatermass is made much more prominent there. So.
Yeah. Nope, it's very true. It is very true. I don't know. I mean, and that's it. That's the interesting thing about it, is that I think everyone has. That's why you have to check it out, Mike, because you're gonna watch it and you just might be like, no, these are now for me definitive. You never know. You never know what you're going to run into.
You should find out for yourself. Yes, Mike. But having seen them, all of them, I agree with you about the first film, Experiment. The second film, I don't like as much as I like the television serial, because Quatermass II, the television serial, is my all-time favorite version of Quatermass. My favorite, But the movie has a lot of the key moments that recreates a lot of them the same, that for the reasons that I love the TV serial. But for me, I think that Quatermass in the Pit is like wonderful, like 5 Million Years to Earth. It's like, you definitely should watch that. It's a good movie just on its own.
I will say, because even though Quatermass in the Pit is my favorite serial of it, I do think probably my favorite Quatermass episode is actually Quatermass II, episode 5, The Frenzy. I think that is truly, I mean, I've never, for something, first of all, it's done live. And obviously you have film inserts, and the film inserts are phenomenal. They're done at night. There's, and if anyone hasn't seen these, we'll probably say some spoilery things. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you may not want to listen any further. But, the whole idea that, people are food, and that, they're being clogged, being used to clog up certain parts of machinery to stop this uprising and stuff. But there's that scene with Quatermass's daughter, and she's just by herself, and she does that Nigel Neal thing of like, I can see them all around me.
She's describing.
What's that?
She's describing what she's seeing rather than showing it. Yeah.
With such a heightened alert. That it's just it gives me chills. And I remember when I really sat down, I really watched it, because I wrote a 3-article thing for my blog about the serial. And when I really sat down and watched it, I just couldn't believe my eyes what I was seeing. It was so wonderful, and it really got me full of anxiety, to be honest, because there was just so much atmosphere to it. I thought, God, that's incredible, and it really got let down, in my opinion, with the final episode of Quatermass II.
It's Quatermass II, and obviously the reasons that it is my favorite is because I saw it when I was an adult in the 90s, and by that point, I mean, this is a television production from 4 decades before that, and I was watching it, and it still had the effect of frightening me just by its visuals. The image of the family being taken away from the picnic, the character coming, and I can't remember the character's name, coming down covered from the oil coming down, and the just some of the other visuals in that. It's just, like I said, 4 decades on, it was still able to frighten me as an adult, and that's why that one kind of sticks in my mind as being my favorite.
It's interesting, and I see David on here, and people who are far more interested, know this stuff far more than any of us do. But that guy, the one covered in oil, that whatever it is, it's done 2 ways. First, he's on location. He comes down the stairs doing that, but then they cut back to studio, so that was live. And correct me if I'm wrong, it meant that they had to cover him in that stuff again for the live shot in there, which I thought, oh my God, this poor guy, just absolutely ridiculous. Now this is interesting. Okay, let's jump ahead to Quatermass in the Pit. And Noel's reading my mind here, okay? You need to listen to off-air recording of Hancock's TV episode, The Horror Serial, for all your Quatermass fans. Yes. So that being said, what I found very interesting about this, and I don't know, especially to those of you who are really big Hancock fans, was this something you knew about, or is this something that you did not know about? I don't mean that this episode audio existing, but what I'm going to play for you and my thought process behind this. First of all, the horror serial was an episode from series 4, episode 6 of Hancock's Half Hour. Like many of these programs, the episode does not exist. This was from 1959, so it would not have been recorded on the tape. And so what you have here is you have the normal opening to Hancock's Half Hour. This is just a normal opening to Hancock's Half Hour for those who do not know the show. Okay, this is not from the horror serial, but this is how they normally open the episodes.
BBC Television presents Tony Hancock in
Hancock's Half Hour.
Now that is from the same season as the horror serial. I'm going to play the opening to the horror serial for you. And it's just a still frame. Don't worry, there's no video because the episode doesn't exist. But here's a still frame with the audio from the opening. And just take a listen.
BBC Television presents Tony Hancock in
Hancock's Half Hour.
Now, as you will see or hear, that there's a booming voice and whatnot. Now, I was told, and maybe you all knew this already, when it goes a circular wipe, it's not Tony Hancock there. It's actually one of the Martians from Quatermass in the Pit. Now, that is to be said. This was broadcast in May of 1959. Quatermass in the Pit ended in January of 1959. So, I mean, and it is a direct, it is based off of it. So I thought to myself, I'm just curious because I never heard that before from anywhere. And I was curious if that was the case, that it mentions anywhere that it was the Martian from Quatermass in the Pit. So I went back to the script for it, which is funny. The script itself says Hancock's Half Hour Quatermass. It doesn't even have horror serial in it. Now, what seems to be missing here from my stuff I put in here, it's the other page of the script that has the BBC Television presents Tony Hancock in Hancock's Half Hour. That's not on there, but I had it in there and it seems to disappear. But the thing is that on the script, it doesn't make any mention that it's anything other than Tony Hancock. So I guess where I'm coming from is this person who said it to me, did he see other people who had watched it, or was it some? I mean, does a print exist that this person would have seen? And this person who told me has quite a substantial film library. So I'm just very curious about it. I'm curious if anyone else ever heard if that was the Martian, if they've heard that story before. Something else about that. So I also went back and I have a BBC sales catalog from 1964 that they send out to all around the world to say which BBC programs are available for exporting and syndication. And what I found for Hancock's Half Hour, first of all, they had series 1 and 2, which doesn't exist, but their series 1 and 2 in the 1964 sales catalog was actually 2 and 3. So they kind of shifted on us, but the horror serial was not part of the syndication at that point. So it's something I just find very interesting, and I don't know if anyone else cares or ever ran across that. And also, when I went back through my files, because I put some of this on my podcast a number of years ago, because we had talked about Tony Hancock in one of the episodes, that they provide. Hancock Appreciation Society provided me like like the old version of the horror serial, which was very bad quality. But what's interesting about it is that the intro was tacked on. So, was that? I'm sorry, I'm really off on that. Thank you. It was broadcast the 30th of January. Wow, that's just days after the end of Quatermass in the Pit. Thank you for that. I appreciate that correction. because that makes it even more really, really interesting. So I'm just kind of spouting on about it. I just think it's really interesting whether or not anyone had ever even seen or heard that before, because it's surprising that it's not more mentions just made of that, because I don't think the Martians appear in it. It's more of just Tony finds something in his backyard and they have to dig it up and stuff, and hilarity ensues. So it's a fun episode. They're all fun. It's one of my favorite shows. So
Well, and if it was broadcast that close to the actual serial, I mean, it's very likely the props were still around the BBC, and it would have been very easy if they had used that.
well,
No way to know unless an episode gets returned, I suppose.
right? I mean, it was pretty exciting that we got a better quality audio, and that audio is, for those interested, it's available on one of these Hancock Half Hours collectible sets, and they actually ended up they were going to do 4, and before Tristan Bryn Desant passed away, I had him on, and he was really excited because they were going to do all of these, and they never got the 5th one out. There is a rarity set out now, I think a 5th version, but I think it's only available online or something, which I haven't. It's a download, and I want physical disc stills. I'm still one of those type of people, so I don't know, but I just find it all very interesting. So I'm just going through comments here real fast. Is there a radio only program Quatermass or just a TV serial? And so once again, what ended up happening is Quatermass Memoirs, which I'm trying to find here real fast. I was going to pull that out, and I haven't had a chance to do so yet. I'm seeing, let's see here. I have so much stuff over here. Yeah, let's just say it's back here somewhere. But that has Andre Kerr as Quatermass, and basically what he does is he remembers his time as being his life, and it kind of ignores the final Quatermass story from 1979, and it features the audio from the first 3 serials, which is really odd that it's Andrew Keir from the film versions talking about the television versions, basically. But it's nice, it's fun. I mean, it's good. I mean, have either of you heard that?
No.
No, I have not.
I think I have a copy of it around here somewhere, but no, I've not listened to it.
Right. Yeah, and then because it actually aired on the radio, BBC Radio, and then it was released on CD, and it was. It's pretty good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. What is it, Mike, that when you're watching these things, you've been a big fan of Doctor Who, clearly. What is it that you like about Quatermass? About the serials? Let's just say the serials.
Yeah, it's there are lots of different layers to it. And I suspect other folks maybe who watched a lot of Doctor Who or British television in general might associate with this too. But part of it is just people spotting. And you're watching and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so and so from that one episode that I remember. Yeah, exactly. And so part of it is like train spotting, but for actors.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a level of that. There's the historical piece of it, which I find just watching archive television is fun for that. Just seeing how they accomplished. Obviously, just the story and the atmosphere itself. Like we were talking earlier about just like how dark and grisly like Quatermass II was, and 3 as well, or the Pit, I should say. And so, I mean, it's just really good storytelling, so there are like multiple layers and levels that you can enjoy it and appreciate it from. And then just thinking about it in terms of how it had or has impacted Doctor Who storytelling. Like you can see elements that either inspired or were lifted from some of those Quatermass serials and then adapted and used in later Doctor Who stories.
I don't know what you're talking about. What about you, Robert?
Well, obviously, I mean, the serials to me have a great reminder of like a lot of the early Doctor Who too. The television production was very similar at the time. But to me, what's always going to stand out, and it's not just with Quatermass, it's Nigel Neal's writing. He just had such a way of like, it's like, kind of, he's telling a regular story, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it turns into something else. And it does it so slowly that it catches you off guard. And really, very disturbing images that kind of get you thinking. And it's like I said, it's not just in that. It's even in his adaptation of 1984. You have it in Year of the Sex Olympics. It's his writing in general. He just has a good way of coming up with these things that, and then telling a story around them to really set you off balance. And I know we've discussed this before, Greg. I mean, it's literally, even though it's really good, it's like it's hard to sit down and rewatch Year of the Sex Olympics because you just know you're going to be depressed for several days after.
Yeah, Mike, how did that go for you when you watched Year of the Sex Olympics?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what day you watched it on, too?
Was it Christmas? Was that it? Or no? See, I got it for myself as a Christmas present. And so, even though I know what it is, I bought it. It's fun to unwrap things under the tree, and the whole family's there. And so I wrapped it up, not really thinking much about it because I purchased some other British DVDs. And so we're all passing around our presents we're opening. And then my adult daughter and teenage daughter were both like, oh, what did you get yourself? And I was like, oh, I got this. And then I got the Year of
the Sex Olympics.
It's not what you think. It's not what you think. And of course, then I watched it, and just like you guys, completely crushed by what happens in that story. And I don't regret getting it. Like, it's really good storytelling and powerful social commentary, which like resonates now, even, how many decades later. So it's an incredible series. But my gosh, yeah, I'm not sure when the next time I'm going to sit down and watch that.
There's no hurry, is there? I mean, it's not. I mean, it's just like, what is it why do I need to see this again? And I don't say that because I don't like it, but it is very depressing, and it's on many levels. And I think it's interesting when people saw that in '69, and people in the '70s and '80s, or even probably when people got it through tape trading before we did. That was, I mean, at that point, you probably like, that's not going to happen. That's weird. Why? How could that even be possible? And here we are now. And when we first saw it, I think the first time I ever saw it was like in 2003 or something like that, that we brought it and played it somewhere, that it became, I mean, even then, that was really the start of that sort of, that television, that's that realistic sort of like reality television thing. And that was like, even then it was like, well, we're not quite there yet, but I think we are now.
Yeah. Well, even 1984, Greg, I've shared with you many times, I'm not a fan of dystopian stories. I never have been. I never enjoyed the original book for 1984, any movies, anything. I really am not a fan of like seeing this depressing visions of the future. But there's something about Nigel Neal where he turns it a little bit. He doesn't just tell the story, the George Orwell's story. He makes Winston just a little more human, and what happens to him a little more disturbing.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, my favorite version, I'm not like some, I haven't sought out all of the versions to watch. But
well, it's a Doctor Who cornucopia. You have to.
It is a Doctor Who cornucopia. And I think at one point, because Robert did a lot of research into just the overall television or media of 1984.
4 doctors. 4. You've got, well, obviously John Hurt. Well, no, 5. I'm sorry. Even no, that's
the count.
4.
No, 5. 5 Doctor
Quatermass.
Who's.
Yeah, no, it's like you've got John Hurt. You've got Christopher Eccleston and Patrick Troughton and Peter Cushing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that Patrick Troughton radio version, that should get a release at some point, because that's really interesting. It's a nice curious to have also.
It is. It has some very nice scenes in it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting when people, because different people have done these adaptions, and that there are and obviously the Christopher Eccleston and Patrick Troughton ones are both radio versions or audio only, and they are very, very different in how they were adapted for those media.
Mm-hmm. Now, someone who has a name that we should all have also, Nerdly Pleasures, which, I mean, that sounds like that's where you would have got your year of the Sex Olympics if they didn't, since they didn't know what the hell that was, Mike. But Nerdly Pleasures, 1984, BFI DVD and Blu-ray, for that matter, to be released on April 11th, 2022. Day one buy? Absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yep, have the pre-order in.
Me too.
I've obviously seen it. This will be a new restoration, and not quite as good as the last restoration I saw, I think, because there won't be any vid firing. Nope. But yeah, I mean, I think will shock people will be, because they are using the 35 millimeter inserts.
They should be. They damn well better be. I mean, what was posted on Rhubarb's by Peter Crocker was that he provided his restoration not as like, you got to follow this, because that's not what Peter would do, but he's just like, in case you wanted to see what kind of came before, they had to have gone back to all the original film. I pray that they do. But that's the thing too, that I feel like I have to bring up, because Ian puts it up here also. It's sad that year is only available in monochrome, and I would agree with that. I do wonder sometimes, and at the trying not to be unpopular here, because I'm grateful that we're getting these, but I do wonder if the BFI are doing the restorations to the best of their ability for what to release, because there's been a few where they haven't done vidfire. Like, for example, we know that there's chroma dots in Year of the Sex Olympics, but what I'm hearing, and you all probably heard this too, that it's not consistent throughout the production. Like, there's some reason it's not consistent. Okay, is it, and everything costs money. Blinking when you're restoring something costs money. I understand that, but it'd been nice to get, like, maybe if there was a few scenes that were solid chroma dots, if we could have a glimpse of those or something. But why couldn't we have gotten a vid-fired year of the Sex Olympics? That would have been really nice. I understand why the Douglas Wilmer Sherlock Holmes doesn't have vidfire, because of how it was output from studio, that it makes a little bit more sense that they didn't do it, even though it sounds very similar to like Wheel in Space episode 6, that we did end up getting a vid-fired version of that. But okay, that's fine. But the thing is that Year of the Sex, 1984, we've seen the vid-fired version. At least you and I have, Robert. I don't know if you have, Mike. It looks amazing. It looks really good for a 2000. There's been 2 restorations on that, 2005 or 6, and then 2014. I think that was the last time Peter did it, because he was anticipating a release back then, and it was scuppered by the George Orwell estate. Okay, but that's the thing. Why aren't we getting vidfire? And I just can't help but think that if they really wanted it and if budget was an issue, I can't imagine that they couldn't have come to some agreement with Peter to get that done. Do I know anything? I don't know anything, but I just know that someone like Peter, who is also really obviously a very strong advocate for television to be, presented the way that it was originally seen, and the BFI, in my mind, should be upholding that standard as well. I just don't understand why we don't get things a certain way.
No, I can't.
Am I going to be blocked from any BFI events in the future now? But I don't know.
Greg, you are completely wrong.
You were wrong. That was my Deborah Watling impersonation.
Next to me saying it was found in Hong Kong.
So they could spend the money restoring the year because it was particularly important production. I mean, yes, I think you could say that about anything, though, right? I mean, I would never want to, myself personally, ever want to put out there what I think is the most important. I think, why can't budget's obviously a big deal, but this is obviously a prestige performance. But and then Ian also goes on to, you're going to say, Mike?
Oh, I was just going to say, even like you had suggested, just a few clips, seeing it restored in color would have been really interesting and neat and cool.
Yeah. And I also understand that it's like, you can't be like, well, just give us some raw clips, because I think everyone who's involved would be like, they're professional. Like, it's almost like walking around in your underwear, that's not how they want to do it. I understand that fully. And then Ian goes on to say, I really like the Wilmer Sherlock Holmes series, which I saw at the time of its original transmission. So you've seen some lost episodes, and also it's probably between that and Jeremy Brett is my favorite Holmes personally. Now, Mike, I know you've seen it because I've given you my Region 1 set. For those who don't know or care, Mike is a bit of a charity for me. Whenever I upgrade my stuff, I give him my old stuff, because otherwise he's just never going to know. He's never going to see the good stuff. And
I am Greg's trash can. And grateful I am too. No, that I'm with you on the Wilmer Sherlock Holmes and the Jeremy Brett. I mean, Wilmer's portrayal is awesome. Like, I don't want to derail us too much off of Quatermass, but literally you should do an episode about like the Wilmer Sherlock Holmes, the Cushing version, maybe even Jeremy Brett, because there's so much great stuff to talk about those series as well. Well,
and I think my love for some of this stuff mirrors very much both of yours, because the idea of a kind of a dynamic, the dynamic of a studio production, in a black and white studio production, I think is amazing. And those Douglas Wilmer productions are very much in that vein, with a lot of location shooting and stuff, and a lot of great lighting and a great ambiance and atmosphere. And Douglas Wilmer himself is, just incredible in the role. And so is Nigel Stock as what's his face. What's his face?
Dr. What's his face?
Dr. Watson face. Fewer than 10. We have more than that. We're on multiple platforms at the moment. But I'm glad to see you, Simon. Simon, who, as I always point out, when him and I always forget who was working with him to help. We're the first to try out the color Pertwee restorations in the mid '80s. So he's done a hell of a lot more than just that. And his dad, Chick, worked on a lot of programs at the BBC Two at the time. So yeah. You got that. And then also, Out of the Unknown 2, none of that was vid-fired, which once again, though, I'm just amazed that we got a set with all those, because that seemed impossible for so long. So I do want to answer very quickly, because I didn't answer the question I asked both of you and what I like about Quatermass. I mean, Quatermass in the Pit, for me, why I like that in particular is, as you both know, I'm into the paranormal. I do a lot of stuff, and before I was even into that, I love the idea of either mythology or something that had to do with the idea of demons, even that people are seeing as demons. And in fact, there's a scientific explanation for that. Not that we've ever seen anything like that in Doctor Who ever at all.
Ever.
It was giant grasshoppers in Velisca all along.
It was giant. It was, yes, Velisca is, something else.
No, I also wanted to mention quickly, though, that we didn't really talk about the fact that also missing from this new BFI release will be the 1965 version, which is based on the same script.
Yes.
So it would have been very interesting to see them presented together. That's unfortunate.
And I just don't know. And so I was going to show a clip from that, but I thought that one might get me in trouble. And I still haven't watched it all the way through.
But they are including the late night lineup.
They're including late night. The full extras have been released. Let me see if I can find that here real fast, and I can tell you all.
To be honest, I think the late night lineup is actually probably more interesting than the production, but whatever.
Well, it's 'cause they have cast from both productions, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Let me just.
But they talk about the production as though it's the new production is how great it is, but I'm not sure I agree with that sentiment. But
it's a different thing altogether. let me just take a look okay, so let's see, it's presented in high definition and standard def, so that apparently is an extra. Newly recorded audio commentary for 1984 by television historian John Deere, host of Nigel Neal's podcast Birdcast, with Toby Haydock and Andy Murray. Nigel Neal, Into the Unknown, from 2022, 72 minutes. Writer, actor, and stand-up comedian Toby Haydock and Nigel Neal biographer and programmer Andy Murray try to unpick who Neal was, what he did, and why his work still matters today. Late night lineup from 1965 is 23 minutes. Members of cast and crew look back.
It's a cut down version.
It's a cut down version of what we have of the controversy surrounding this adaptation of Orwell's classic. That must mean that they take out all the stuff for the 1965 version, perhaps.
It's been a long time since I've watched that, but I mean, the entire episode is about an hour long.
Yeah. Ministry of Truth from this year, 24 minutes, and Conversation of BFI's Dick Fitty. I've heard of him. Television historian Oliver Wake dispels some of the myths that have grown up around the groundbreaking drama over the course of this past half century. Gallery of rare images from the BBC archives, original script, downloadable PDF, illustrated booklet with new writing by Oliver Wake and David Ryan, and a newly commissioned sleeve art by Matt Weedle. Now, and I've heard, yes, it is not complete. 1965 version is not complete. The thing is, I mean, and I'm probably a monster for saying this, is that I would rather see archive programming than new retrospectives. I'm sorry. I really would. Especially when that's kind of a red herring out there for me, is that this 1965 version, although not complete, is out there. How else is that going to get a release? Sorry, I have some.
Well, maybe there's some plans that we aren't aware of for that version as well.
Maybe.
Oh, look, there's Big Brother.
Yep. You're a monster.
He's watching you.
That's all he ever does. That's all he ever does is watch me. For those who care, which I doubt many of you do, this is Linus. And wherever I go, he comes with me, don't you? Do you want to be let down? All right. You're a big fat cat, aren't you? Oh my God. Ooh, that's my workout for the day. I mean, I guess, like, for example, I look back at the Aztec special edition for Doctor Who, and you could tell for them to really want to get people to triple dip. No, it's just a double dip on that. Obviously, it was a way for them to get the Galaxy 4 episode out. What's that?
If you had the VHS triple.
Yeah. But well, you got the thing part right. When Aztecs came out, they also included a bunch of archival stuff on it. That to me is like, well, this is the way to get people to double dip for it, and it worked on me. But that's what I want to see. I want to see stuff from the BBC archives that don't really have a place anywhere else, you know. And so earlier on, I think it was Noel that asked the question, and if it wasn't you, I apologize. He was curious to know what BritBox is like over here for us as far as like cult television is concerned. Now, Mike, do you have BritBox?
Yes.
Because I don't. I do have it, but I don't really pay much attention to it because I have it all anyway. Because I think it was that console room. I was surprised to learn that Blake 7 is on it.
Yes.
Well, that's why Mike has it. Okay.
Hey, I've got the DVD, my friends, so I don't need the BritBox. I just like to support the BritBox.
Careful how you use that F word, okay? Let's not.
Hey, and when are we going to get a Blake 7? When are we going to get a Blake 7 episode? I keep requesting it, Greg, and offering to join you for it, and you never take me up on it.
Are you talking about Blake's 7 episode?
He got disconnected.
Blake's 7 episode being released on Blu-ray.
Yes, I demand it released on Blu-ray, up-resed.
Well, I've actually heard that's not a consideration. You know, I mean, there is film sequences that exist for a lot of the episodes and whatnot. But what else? I mean, because there is Doctor Who, obviously.
It's an interesting mixture of contemporary British output and some archival, but it's what you would probably very much expect. You know, it's a lot of the very mainstream kind of classic series that we grew up, watching on PBS, for example. And so, it's not a definitive service, but I can't even imagine how deep the catalog would really need to go in order to really truly be definitive. I mean, because there's so many eras to look at.
It does feel a bit like that this was where you had a lot of like stuff that appeared, at least in the US, the stuff that mainly appeared on PBS.
Yes. I will say, though, I've used BritBox in the past to kind of check out a few series that I don't like or hadn't at the time currently owned. And then, use that as a decision to whether or not to purchase it, as physical media. So like The Thick of It, I remember watching a couple episodes on BritBox and saying, literally hitting the pause button and ordering it and saying, I'm going to wait until it shows up because this is a really great series. So I mean, for anyone who enjoys collecting British television, but maybe would like to preview at least some of the stuff that's potentially out there, that's a nice piece of BritBox. Yeah,
absolutely. And as Ian puts down there are loads of interesting things still in the BBC archive, such as Counter-Strike, The Incredible Robert Baldrick, Vendetta, Clough, etc. I would agree, but I also feel like there is a lot of I don't know. It seems like the physical releases have really slowed down, unless it's Doctor Who. And, Network, as we talk about, Network seems to have still a fairly reasonable cycle of stuff. But it feels to me like, I don't know if we're getting as much as we used to. And I can hear people saying, well, there isn't as much as there used to be. We are doing a good job of getting a lot of stuff out there. But there is a lot of stuff that's still unavailable. I'm just, it just feels like when I think of like the BBC output, I just don't really know of any like shows that are coming out. I mean, the BFI, even though I just slagged them off for about 20 minutes, I mean, they're still like having 1984 come out. That is a pretty big deal. That is pretty awesome. But it does feel like that it's nowhere near what it used to be.
Well, and I think it's a double-edged sword too, because at least in my own experience, I'll sometimes stumble onto a series that I would really love to invest and buy. And there was a DVD release, but now of course it's out of print and insanely expensive. So like Adamant Lives, I would love to own that. But it's just really difficult to get a copy of. Well, and I just managed to snag A Very Peculiar Practice I think literally as it was going out of print.
Yeah.
And so now it's just insane, the price to be able to get even used copies. So it's, half the problem is just knowing when these things are coming out and showing up late to the party and missing out on potential releases too. And I get why they can't keep the catalog going indefinitely. I mean, it costs money to keep those things pressed and stocked.
And I mean, I get that too, but it always does feel like that, always kind of being behind the curve, and that does make, I think, a lot of us, when something comes out, even if I'm on the fence about it, that I'm going to want to get it, because it seems like that more and more it's not even just like a year afterwards, it's like months afterwards, and suddenly it's unavailable. And it's just like, why, are they making smaller runs so that they can maximize profits, but then it sells out? So for people like myself, and this isn't just like the Doctor Who collections or anything, this is almost anything now. It feels really hard to get some of this stuff. I don't know. It bums me out, quite frankly. It really does. So BritBox is your litmus test and gateway to purchase you never knew you wanted.
Well said.
And I think like one of the earliest things I've seen for BritBox on the US BritBox had been, actually they had Hancock's Half Hour at one point on there. And it ended up, I don't think it stayed on there too terribly long, but it was cool to see, but boy, did it look like crap. The film prints aren't very good anyway, let alone in an HD setting, uprising them, boy, and then streaming, they did not look good. Now this is also very interesting. Print on demand would be something they could do to keep money coming their way and not to the secondary market. Now, what I find interesting about that, last time I did one of these, I did a promo for Kaleidoscope's Hancock series, the 1950s, prior to the BBC series, the ATV, not the ATV, but the early Hancock series. And apparently they were print on demand. They were DVD-Rs. And so many people were absolutely horrified, and they were angered by the fact that they got a DVD set that were DVD-Rs. I somewhat understand it, but I also don't understand it, because they should have been, it should be said up front whether or not they're DVD-Rs or not. I get that part of it. But even so, having it on a DVD-R I was going to ask you, Robert, but you're done with physical media anyway.
Yeah.
But for
I
Mike,
only have long enough to rip. Yeah.
Right. And so for Mike, though, if you got something that you really wanted, you're excited to have, you find out it's a DVD-R, would that disappoint you?
If it was something that was difficult to get a hold of and something I really wanted, then I think it would be worth it, just because that's it. That's your only option.
But it doesn't bother me. Yeah. Because we've had Warner Archive, which has now gone defunct because they don't want to do that, be in that business anymore. But for many of the things that I have in my collection, especially from Warner Archive, I wouldn't have them unless that were the only way to get them. And for the people like complaining about it, it's like, well, you can't get these episodes of Hancock any other way. So what's wrong with the DVD-R? I agree. It's maybe like more forthcoming to tell them this is what you're going to get.
I agree
but
with that too.
At the same time, it's not. I mean, they did get the licensing for it to release it, so it's not like that. It's something that you've bought off of somebody, a pirate on eBay. It's literally, this is the only way that they can afford to release it. So, if you want a copy, like I don't know. I'm in the camp that's like anything's better than nothing if I want to get it and see it.
I am too, and I would agree 100% with you, Robert, that and Kaleidoscope says that they didn't realize that the run was going to be DVD-Rs. Okay, all right, sure. But in the future, maybe that should be something that should be clarified and definitely figured out. And then, but I mean, I guarantee if someone said, well, we're going to release 10th Planet episode 4, but for whatever God knows reason, we're going to recorded on paper video. And, you know, it's like, yeah, we're going to have that. We're going to take it. You know, to your point, Mike, if it's something we want bad enough, we're going to take it however we're going to get it. Otherwise, why? I mean, yeah, I mean, well, I have DVDRs that are, you know, 15 years old. They haven't failed on me. Mm-hmm. And Robert, to your point, like Warner Archives, which they are still around actually, and they actually brought back what's his face that was in charge of everything, which is cool to see. But I got that Porky Pig chronological 5-disc set that has like 100 Porky Pig things, shorts on there. They're all DVDRs. I don't care. Like you just said, I have them. I didn't have them before. It's nice just to have.
Well, yeah, an interesting point is, you know, a lot of people nowadays are switching to to not the physical media and just want to be able to get these things streaming. And streaming is so much poorer quality over a DVD-R, even that, but they're perfectly willing to accept streaming to watch, even though it's poorer quality, lower bit rate than if they had a DVD-R that they could either watch or rip.
And I think, you know, what you're saying and what Ian's saying here is the thing that scares me the most about where we're heading, because as I had pointed out to someone before, because they're just like, I don't know what you're complaining about when I said that, like, I still like my Blu-rays, I still like physical media. He's like, well, we can stream in HD. This is back when there wasn't 4K yet. We can stream in HD. Yes, you can, but it's not going to be the quality of a Blu-ray. It just isn't the same quality. It looks nice, it's fine, but for those of us who, you know, have nice setups, we want to see these things as best as we can at consumer level without, you know, going back to like projecting the film. This isn't the end all be all. And streaming, I worry that people are going to lose touch with what quality really is. I don't want that, obviously. Well, we're going down a very sketchy road with all of that, because then you need to talk about differences between MPEG-2 and MPEG-4 and bit rates and other things. And I mean, they keep improving things, and you know, your home internet speeds keep going up too, so that you can actually, you know, stream in much higher bit rates. And soon you will be able to stream in the same bit rates that you could, you know, watch a DVD in. But yeah, but the video quality is also going to change. I mean, the 8K televisions are on the market right now, and that will only increase exponentially. So, but the shows that we're talking about, these archive shows, I mean, as has already been said, I mean, most of these, other than if they were filmed, then it's potentially, you know, 4K. Very likely you're not going to get any actual 8K resolution out of it. And I think I mentioned this to you, Greg, but, you know, in comparing the recent 4K release of the Universal horror films, the quality of the image is basically, there is no more detail to be got out of the 4K. However, with HDR and some other things, they're able to present a much better picture that has more accurate contrast than the HD versions. And they've added a lot of stabilization to the film. There is no more gate weave. But the film, the images themselves, in doing a very detailed comparison, as you know, I love to take single frames and zoom in and compare the heck out of them. And it's really, there isn't any more detail that's there. You know, I think that this is going to be the same with a lot of these television shows, especially, even though they may have been made on film. You're not going to get much more detail, even if there were 4K versions of them. It's like we're now moving into an area where, if they continue to upscale and upres things into all of these newer formats as they come, we're going to be back to looking like, you know, an episode of Three's Company on an HD TV. Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, to kind of bring it back a little bit, but keep on the restoration front, this was a bit of a surprise when it came out. I did not expect to see this out on Blu-ray with an HD remaster to it. And this is where what we're hoping happens with 1984, taking advantage of all the original 35 millimeter location film. And this, of course, was never recorded to tape. This was broadcast live and captured to 35 millimeter film during broadcast, very similar to how a telerecording is done, but to 35 millimeter, not 16. You know, Mike, did you get this, or do you still just have the? I
too brought props in anticipation. So
no,
yes.
So you didn't wait for Greg to get another upgrade and have that one there onto you.
As you say,
you spent money on British television. Wow. And it didn't have the word sex in the title, and you still got it.
It was a very disappointing Christmas that year that I got that one.
Mm-hmm.
It was the pits. See what I did there?
But
unfortunately, I did.
I think it would if so. You're saying that 1984, there is no definite confirmation that the 35 millimeter inserts will be included yet in HD.
There has not been a confirmation. I'm sure they are, but I worry. Let's put it that way. Yeah,
because I mean, obviously, we've seen those transferred not into HD, but into standard def, and they're like phenomenal. So that would be just horrifying that if they weren't presented.
Truly phenomenal. Truly phenomenal. Yeah. I mean this alone, and when I say this, I actually mean when we're talking about, this version, the original 2006 restored release with the most hideous cover of all time. I remember watching Quatermass in the Pit and just being blown away from the outset from, first of all, it's so rich in location footage, but then the fact that it apart from a couple shots that they couldn't find, it's just stunning. Wow.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I think this is the best cover I've ever seen for really any Quatermass property. And it was nice to see that that we were given a cover that doesn't look like, that it's some horrible, cheesy sci-fi abomination from the 50s. I mean, this is the stuff that's like, you do know that covers are used to help sell stuff, right? I mean, are we aware of that? I mean, I hate to say it, but even this is better than that.
Maybe they didn't want it to sell out too quickly so that fans like myself wouldn't be disappointed and finding out too late that it was already done.
Well, in fairness, Ian, everyone that certainly has the right to their opinion. I can understand where you're coming from there, and that they have to cover 3 serials. But I personally feel like that there's probably a more artistic way to do so than what we got. But it's great to hear that somebody likes it, and I'm sure you're not the only one. But I do remember like Steve Roberts on the restoration team forum saying all the work that they put into restoring these, and then they get a cover like this that makes it look cheesy, and it looks, to me it feels like it belittles what this character in the series is about. And maybe I'm just taking it way too far and too out of context. I don't know.
Well, you notice that I didn't say anything, because to me, I look at the cover of that release and I go, boy, I am really glad that they spent all of the budget on the restoration and left $2 for cover design, because it's to me, that's how it feels. And I actually know I'm joking a little bit. I do mean that. It's like I want more of the money spent where it's important to me rather than the cover. Because, and as you know, as you just said, Greg, I mean, I ripped that disc a long time ago. It now sits on my hard drive so that I can play it back. I don't look at the cover that often anymore. So it's, it can be whatever it wants. I'm happy that they spent the money where I wanted it spent.
I get the sentiment. I can't imagine that there was like someone, like if you went to them versus like Lee, and there's like a big price difference personally, but maybe there is. I am someone who, I mean, look at me. I mean, look behind me. You've seen up here. I do look at the covers. It's like people who have like a record collection, take them out. I enjoy them. This is probably why I'm never going to fully embrace the digital realm. because I love, even though that is so much easier how you play stuff and how most people play stuff, I love the act of seeing everything on a shelf that I can go to, pull off something, and stick it in a machine and play it, I guess.
Mhm.
Well, as you know, I still have quite a bit of stuff on my shelves.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically for Doctor Who, as you know, I got to redesign all the covers myself. So now they're exactly what I want them to
Well,
be.
that's what I was just about to say. If someone who's like, I never, blah, blah, blah. You're like, yeah, you remade them. So
I remade 158 different covers for, well, more than that, because I did the new series as well. And now a lot of people online use my covers and they don't even know they're mine, but that's fine.
It could be too, we're a bit jaded from the whole Region 1 Doctor Who covers in the early days, the DVD releases, which were really bad photo montage cut-ups.
Now, come on.
well,
Laura
you
did those
would-
herself, I think.
Yeah. And you would be, because some of us never actually subscribed to the Region 1 DVD releases in any way, shape, or form.
Those were the naive days back then.
Well, but to be fair, before Clayton started on his journey we had, I think the Region 2 stuff had some of the worst covers, like the most inappropriate screen grab, and that was a cover. Remembrance of the Daleks was a burnt out Dalek in the street. And I'm like, oh, that got me excited for this.
They weren't exciting, but I did like the fact that they were going for a certain aesthetic there, which was all of those covers featured the villain or monster of the story for those first few covers before they switched over. And even Clayton's early covers were that way specifically, like for instance, the Weirin and the Cybermen. So before they started to branch out and allow him to do bigger designs with more in the image.
Well, and I've said this before too, with like regards to the novelizations. I just don't think we can get away with this any longer, though. And I mean, I think we could, but they won't. Is like say the cover for the novelization to An Unearthly Child, where it's just the junkyard with the TARDIS in there, and that's 1/4 of the story, and that's what they put on there. And I find it a fascinating, beautiful cover. Now it's going to have every character that's been in the story, including the third caveman to the left. And to me, I just wish that, to me, simpler is always better. Less is more for me. And I wish I would love it. And once again, I know they won't do this anymore. I'd love it if there's stuff that doesn't have the Doctor on it, but for brand purposes, that they have to have it now.
Well, keep in mind that all those Targets covers are being reused on the audio releases. As a matter of fact, although Unearthly Child is in this weird
limbo,
it got lost in between Audio Go and moving over to the BBC. The cover had been released, and it was the original 1981, I believe, cover of art of just the junkyard.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. But certainly I think going forward, though, when it's new stuff, like for the big ranges, like, Blu-ray and whatnot. Obviously the collection is set, right? That's set. We know what those are going to look like in general terms for now on. The animated ones, they're always going to have the Doctor on it, but I think those are looking pretty good too.
It's a great design for the Blu-ray sets, and when they change the logo on them, look even better, I suppose.
Keys of Marinus. Ian writes, for me, the most disappointing cover is the one from my favorite serial of all, the Keys of Marinus. I thought I heard that was originally painted for a novelization for Edge of Destruction that actually didn't happen, because I think David Whitaker had passed. Maybe I'm talking porkies, but they just reused it for that. Maybe I'm completely off on that, though.
I don't recall. Yeah.
David Howe, where are you?
It's been a long time since I read the Target book.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm not totally wrong, so that's good. a rarity.
Enjoy that moment, Greg. Enjoy it.
It's not going to happen again. Enjoy it. It shall be your last.
I noticed we haven't done a whole lot of talk about the fourth Quatermass serial. Did that one get a Blu-ray release too, a high def?
Oh, yes. In multiple formats.
In multiple formats. And it also includes the film as well.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's the film is it's full 16:9, I believe, or is it 1.78 or something? But it's a different aspect ratio than the television episodes.
Yes, it is.
And it's so yeah, and it's all from the same transfer.
To me, that story almost teeters on the edge of Sex Olympics level depression. It's a very bleak, for me personally, a very bleak story. I mean, it starts bleak and then it gets worse as things go.
It's not easy for me to find the aspect ratio in the book because Andrew Pixley wrote it. Therefore, it's like 300 pages. It's amazing.
It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. It is. Well, I mean, once again, for those who don't know, I mean, at the end in particular, right, that it's pretty final.
Mm-hmm.
And even, I mean, it's also, I mean, I wonder how it came across to people in 1979, because we were talking 20 years between The Pit and this. I mean, did people care? I mean, there really wasn't a lot that perpetuated. Like nowadays, like for example, Futurama is coming back, and it's been in our consciousness for ever since because it's on streaming, it's on television, there's articles. But back then, pretty much when something's done, you don't get a whole lot more about it unless you're talking about like a DWB, time screen, something like that. Got to wonder if there's people who really were like, wow, this is great. Quatermass is returning.
I think you would know more about that, Greg, because you would have the contemporary radio times.
TV times, it's ITV.
Okay. Yes. So, but still, any of their coverage that was in it, but I don't know. I mean, there would have been a lot of the younger audience watching that didn't know Quatermass at all, too, or only knew it by repute. So, I don't know. Similar to Doctor Who, so I don't know how many times the Quatermass itself was repeated.
Yeah, I don't think like Quatermass in the Pit was repeated apart from its movie omnibus version that was over 2 nights. I don't think it was repeated since then. Yeah. Obviously Experiment was never repeated. So, I mean, but it's really interesting. It's like Ian, I just put this up. I'm going to put it up again. Ian had said that thing is that old TV was not really accessible for us in the 1970s, apart from like Sergeant Bilko. And I hear a lot of British viewers love Sergeant Bilko. They just love that series. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like, and the thing about Quatermass is that there is, like it was mentioned upstream in the comments, that the script was written a long time ago. Before 79, it was written in the late 60s. And so you have basically hippies in it, which, it does.
They are hippies.
Really think about it, it feels a little out of place. But I mean, I guess when I watched it, I never really thought, oh my God, this is so dated, because it was 1979. I didn't watch it myself till like 1996. So it's not like I would really pick up on what's totally dated. But, it's really interesting to think what kind of impression it made. And really it's just the end. It was the end of that story in general.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, did you like, I mean, where do you like that story? Did you like it?
It was enjoyable, but much like Year of the Sex Olympics, I'm not sure when I'll go back and rewatch it, just because, like I said, it was such a downer and bleak. And then, of course, the ending, too.
It is.
Yeah.
I think I actually like Halloween 3 better than I like That's Neil's story.
That says a lot. How about Kinvig? Do you like Kinvig better?
I've never seen Kinvig.
I haven't either. I mean, upstream, someone had mentioned, Kinvig wasn't that good either. I don't know. I mean, I've heard that my whole life, but I haven't seen it, so I really shouldn't comment on it until I actually see it myself. Because I mean, I'm sure it's not that great. It doesn't sound great, but we all different, right?
But it's the same. It's like some of the episodes of Beasts are, but then there are some that are just great. And I don't know if you've ever seen Beasts, Mike.
No, I don't believe I have.
That's because they never upgraded the release, so I've never given it to you.
You cut me deep. You cut me very deep, Greg.
Good. But the thing is about that. I mean, yeah, Beast. Barty's Party is to me phenomenal.
Everybody jumps to Barty's Party, but I actually think the baby is much more frightening. But and so you understand what it is if you don't know, Mike. Beast is an anthology series that Neil wrote, and so they're half-hour episodes, and they being an anthology, I mean, it's just like they're not really connected at all, and it was just a way for him in short story form to tell things very similar to the Quatermass and the other things, the Sex Olympics, his other storytelling, and some of them, yes, can be rather disturbing and frightening.
Recommended purchase, though? Would you say I should go out and find it?
It's one of those you probably won't be able to find now.
Ah, damn.
But you can look.
It'd be interesting because when I got around to getting it, it was extremely cheap. And it also has Beast has a great episode starring brilliant Simon Oates, Dr. Richard Dumach. Ian, which one is that? I'm forgetting that. The one that I will consider probably one of the worst things I've ever seen is the one with the dolphin. That is, what is that one called? See if I can find it real fast. I wrote about it. And people got angry at me because I dared to have an opinion on Nigel Neal that was different than anyone else. But boy, this thing was, see if I can find it here real fast. Give me 1 second. Nope. I can't find it. I don't want to waste our time, but it was one where Martin, what's his face? Because I wasn't expecting to talk about these. The Killer Dolphin was a Doomwatch episode. There was one. Oh, that's why, because I couldn't spell Beast correctly. For God's sake,
Buddy Boy.
Your Buddy Boy, yes. Holy cow. Buddy Boy is, to me...
Disused aquarium haunted by the spirit of a dolphin. Now, see, that sounds right up your alley, though, Greg.
I hate it if you got disconnected from us. Yeah, Buddy Boy...
I found it on Amazon. It's still in print, at least it appears to be, for merely $12.12.
Oh,
so
not bad.
Still going for a good rate. So
it's
worth picking up.
Worth it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Even for the dolphin episode.
Yeah, that one is really a tough one for me to sink my teeth in. Martin, what's his face? Why can't I find? Whoever wrote this crappy article should have had his name up there. What's that?
Martin Shaw, you mean?
Yeah, Martin Shaw. The thing about that, it's just so ludicrous, and it all starts off in basically a topless bar, and it's very gratuitous, I think, because there's a scene where Martin Shaw is talking to the owner of this bar, and all these women are walking around without tops on. So make sure you have that ready for Christmas, Mike, when you can unwrap it for everyone to see.
As long as the dolphin is clothed, that's the important thing.
I was hoping that the dolphin would show up in this place, and he actually never really leaves the aquarium. But it's bad. It's like to me, it's like one of the worst things I've ever seen. Seen Nigel Neal had written personally. Anyone else? Anyone else out there? What are your thoughts on Buddy Boy? Because when I wrote the article about it, I was skewered in the comments for people who were like, I just don't get it. How dare you talk about Nigel Neal? One of them was like, what did you ever write?
Oh, so Neil himself responded to you.
Neil, as the ghost of Buddy Boy, wrote to me and told me to fish off, he said.
See,
in a series of clicks and whistles.
Yeah, he was like,
during Party is has a lot of those elements that you were talking about earlier, Greg, of his writing, where a lot of it relies on them describing what's happening. And I mean, you hear the sound of the rats, but you don't really see them ever. And it's all like, psychological. And I mean, I don't know that, because I don't think the BBC would show rats after they gotten, even though it's a couple decades later, that all of the hate mail they got for showing a rat in 1950 or 1984.
Your dad did dolphins? Simon, like what did he do? Like what? Because his dad worked on like one of the things we got from Simon's dad, Chick, was all the audio and stuff for Star Cops that he had kept, that vocals and music and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, during Party, that's what I love about it. And you're absolutely right. That's what I thought of when I was talking about the Quatermass episodes earlier. That whole thing of if you get amazing actors, like you had Anthony Bates in it. You also had, I can't remember her name, but it was they were so strong that they were just, they sold it. That's the whole thing. You can't do it unless the actors can sell it. And they totally did. Maybe that the actors weren't selling it to you about the dolphins. Martin Shaw certainly wasn't. And I think Martin Shaw is pretty good, but he was not selling it that day. I mean, honestly, no one has written in the comments that they liked Buddy Boy if they've seen it, unless they haven't seen it.
Mike hasn't seen it yet.
I love it so far.
What's wrong with you?
That would be another episode, Greg.
I just don't get you sometimes. I don't understand.
So
bringing me down.
We've talked Quatermass and a few other of Nigel Neal's like pinnacle pieces. Beasts was a new one for me that I hadn't heard of before, so I've already got it on my Amazon list. Are there other like
Kinvig?
What's that?
Kinvig.
So, but yeah. I'm curious, like, are there other like really good programs out there that Nigel Neal had a hand in creating that ought to be checked out? Or have we hit all the big heavy hitters?
Well, unfortunately, I think some of the other big hitters are missing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like The Road, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although, would it be? I mean, it's one of those, it's a case of like, it's kind of like a London After Midnight. If it actually came back, would it be as revered as it is because we can't see it? So, don't know.
I mean, but even if London After Midnight came back, I would still be, it's still, for me, that'd be if it came out in physical media, that'd be a first day purchase for me because I would want to see it, after all these years. And I think The Road, I mean, just really for me, anything that is 1960s BBC television, I would definitely get it first day. Now, Andrew, very true. Mike, do you have the Stone tape?
No, I don't.
That would be definitely, that's a good one, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Another one that hasn't been upgraded, so hasn't been able to be passed on.
See, Greg, why haven't you given me a free copy of that yet?
It had been upgraded. Well, a new release did come out. The version I have is the BFI release back from like 2000, 2001. Then Network did re-release it, but I don't think a whole lot was done to it, where I just decided that I liked how it looked. I liked all the stuff. So I mean, like without having the DVR and stuff. So I was fine with it. I don't watch it that much, like hardly ever.
And it's interesting because, we talked about the fact, well, we slightly touched on it, but, the fact that a lot of Quatermass ended up affecting Doctor Who, especially in the 70s, things like the Demons and Ark in Space and some others in that. But it's interesting because it still continues to, because we're just talking about that it's the Stone Tape also kind of gets reworked into Hyde, the Matt Smith episode. It feels very much like the same setting and a lot of the same story points and things. Obviously, it's not, but things get passed down, even if it's like somebody doesn't consciously think that they're retelling the same story.
Well,
but it
and that
definitely feels like it.
That's interesting because in the paranormal field, people spout about the Stone Tape theory.
But
And
they've never seen it. They don't know what
well,
it is.
and that's my question. Is that a Nigel Neal creation? Is that 100% his creation, or has that been something that's been around, or has it been someone saw it and augmented it and changed it for use in a different area?
I don't know. That's
I don't
literally.
know
I know
either.
you're
I
asking.
really
You're asking
don't know.
your viewers that question, I think. But yeah, I don't know. It may have been something that was around before, and Neil was just interested, and took that on and wrote a story around it.
I mean, the word tape is not an old word. So you got to think that I tend to want to think that he created it and someone kind of pilfered it for themselves. And Ian, the Stone Tape gave me a realistic explanation for existence of ghosts. For us in the paranormal field, we call that residual energy because it's replaying something that happened, opposed to having a spirit that actually is some sort of like almost free will. They're just replaying something that the whole point of why it's imprinted on this tape, because it was so traumatic for them. And that energy is actually implanted on it. The Stone Tape comes in a 2-pack with Ghost Watch. Mike, have you seen Ghost Watch?
No. Okay, so another one to be
Well,
watching.
that's not
Not Nigel Neal.
But Ghost Watch is one of my favorite things. I don't know if it's one of yours, Greg, but I enjoy Ghost Watch.
I should watch it again. I haven't watched it since I've only seen it the one time. You and I watched it at my parents' house. But it would be interesting to watch it again and see. And what's funny about that is now Craig Charles is actually doing a paranormal show in the UK, which is really interesting.
So the basic premise of Ghost Watch, again, this isn't Neil, but I believe it was 92 that it was broadcast.
I think so.
And
now don't give it away.
That's it. People thought it was real because what it was a dramatization that had been written, but it starred actual newsreaders like Michael Parkinson and Sarah Green, who were newscasters and did that, but they were cast as actors in these roles, and it retold a lot of the, isn't it the retold pieces of the was it the Edinburgh? What's the actual one? It was in the Conjuring 2.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name. I don't think it was that, but I know what you're talking about.
That storyline, it was a famous ghost story that had been investigated by the Warrens in the UK, and it basically took that as a basis and told a story about a mother and her daughters living in a house that they said were haunted, and they have these people come in and they're doing a live broadcast, and it's done as, and you may remember, Mike, there was a in the US there's a big deal about this back in the late 80s. I think it was called the Day After or something. It was about a nuclear holocaust, but it was all done as a news program being presented as real, and they kept, we had commercials, and they kept going to commercial, and then every time they'd come back, they'd say, "This is not real. What you're watching is not real." Well, in the UK, there were no commercials, so it was live. There was something beforehand saying this is a dramatization, but people thought that it was real because it was this program from the studio and live from the house. And then the creepiest part is that there are actually moments when you see the ghost Pipes. And Pipes is a hidden, and supposedly there are still a couple of instances of Pipes that have not been found.
Yep.
Yet. That there's ones that literally it took people almost a decade before they realized, and it's one of the best places that you can see the ghost. He's just standing in with a crowd of people, and the camera rushes past him, and you see him one time reflected in a window and some other things, and it's very, very creepy to watch. But at the time, again, it was like a War of the Worlds, where people thought that it was very real and actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell a real story that happened here in 1994, 1995, probably, when I directed newscasts at KUIC in Mankato, and it was a CBS affiliate, and they did one of those sort of shows where it looked like it was a newscast, live newscast, but it was about a big meteor coming to Earth. And so, it would be like cut to military people talking about what's going to happen to the Earth if this big thing the size of New York hits the Earth and all this stuff. The giveaway is between each commercial break, there'd be like a disclaimer, then there'd be commercials. I mean, if something like this happened, there wouldn't be commercials. But at the end of the broadcast, like it starts and ends within 2 hours, this tragedy on Earth. Like the military launches a missile at it, it explodes, but then the end of the broadcast is, "Oh my God, we didn't realize there's actually 1 million of them coming towards Earth," that sort of thing. So, whatever, it's pretty crappy, whatever. I'm getting ready to start directing the newscast that night. It's Sunday night, 10 p.m. The phone rings. There's no one in the station. So I pick up the phone. I'm like, KUIC. And she's just like, this woman is like, what about the meteors? And I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" She goes, "The meteors, what about them? You ended your broadcast on them." And I said, "Ma'am, that was a TV show. That's not real." And then she starts crying. And she's like, "We've been huddled in the basement for like 2 hours." And she was like bawling.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm a monster, I wanted to laugh a little bit, because it's like, who on earth would think this? But at the same time, I'm trying to be like, yeah, I'm sorry. I gotta do a newscast now. I mean, we're not going to go from hundreds of meteors coming to Earth to cut to another newscast of us talking about corn prices in Mankato. Obviously this isn't real. And it's never left me that, just like War of the Worlds in the 1930s, there's always going to be some who aren't paying enough attention, but suddenly they're scared over this stuff. And I felt bad, but at the same time, it's just like, at least the good news is you're not going to die from it. I mean, if there's something to be taken from this.
Got good news and bad news.
I thought that you were going to tell a story about a live melon drop, Greg.
Hell, that wasn't too far. That wasn't too far from where I lived either, to be honest. That was about 4 miles from where I lived, where the original KTMA studios were. And I back when it was in my backyard, I was not a fan of MST3K. So, just saying. Sorry, Mike. I know it's your religion, but
why do you hate good things, Greg? Like you hate MST3K, you hate like 7, you hate me. Why do you hate good things? Wholesome things.
wholesome.
I pushed it too far. I almost had you.
Yeah, no one's buying that one. Ian says some of the acting
full of holes.
Yeah, maybe wholesome. Some of the acting in Ghostwatch was ropey, to say the least. Years earlier, some viewers to Panorama thought spaghetti trees were real. Remember when listeners in the U.S. thought that the broadcasts of War of the Worlds were real? Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I'd say, whether the thing is that some of the acting may have been ropey, but it also comes across as actual, like, this was supposed to be live. They don't get to do retakes or things like that. So I don't think anybody comes across as particularly like poor. It comes across as what it was intended to be. Now, does that mean they're a good actor or they're a bad actor that was having problems remembering the lines? That I still think it's a very frightening thing to watch.
That reminds me too. Wasn't there I believe it was on Quatermass II, a warning in advance of at least one of the episodes about just the nature of it, and
yeah.
So
people of certain dispositions, they should not be watching.
So a person can get caught up even when they know it's fictional.
Well, and that's the whole thing too, that there was, if I'm not mistaken, there were questions raised in Parliament over 1984, especially with the scenes with the rats.
And I was going to say that's what I was just going to say, that announcement is probably definitely to do with the fact that, I mean, the television was very new at the time, and they weren't thinking anything of it. And the amount of complaints that they got, probably made them think twice about doing some other things, especially when it came to Quatermass II.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that Neil, he was always pushing the envelope.
Which you think to yourself, the stuff then seems tame. The stuff that I thought was pushing the envelope in the 80s and 90s now seem tame. You kind of like, what's next? How far does this go before it's acceptable? And I don't mean that as a prude. I guess I'm just thinking more in general, like what is the threshold? I think of like TBS when, a couple of things, like Jonathan Ross, when but I remember that one episode that Christopher Eccleston appeared on, and Robert, you and I were watching it, and when the camera was zooming by all the guests, because they're all just like sitting in a row, and all of them were like flicking off the camera and stuff, and you're like, what the hell's going on? That's 2005. Now I'm like on TBS, like when Conan had his show, people would say shit and stuff, and that to me for broadcast television, that's like, whoa, okay, and it's like it's on TBS for like American Dad, and it's also on the Cartoon Network reruns of American Dad, some of those words. It's just like, wow, okay.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, the movies we grew up having to get our parents to either take a see, or we weren't allowed to see in the 80s, like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street movies that were rated R, are now shown in the middle of the afternoon on Sci-Fi, where any 4-year-old can just flip the channel over and watch them.
Yeah. I mean, where's Mary Whitehouse these days? Oh, that's right, she's dead. Sorry. It's weird. It's just weird to me. That's all. I mean, I once again, I'm not trying to be like it shouldn't be that way. It's just weird. It makes me wonder because my background has been working with broadcast standards at networks for 15 years, where I would work with them, like commercial materials that we would make for big brands such as Subaru, Best Buy, Miller Lite. I would have to send concepts to the networks before we even started shooting to make sure they approve the scripts, because they could easily be like, we don't want your stuff on our network because you're not passing our guidelines. So there's that. The networks are still strict, but other sources of broadcast, they're not bound to that. And I just wonder where this is all going to go eventually. Mike?
We're going to come full circle. We're going to have right back where we started again. I blame Nigel Neal for this. He's the one who started the ball rolling.
Well, and this is true too. I mean, 7 prophetic words that would be different now, and it would be very different.
Because I think a couple of them are acceptable now.
Right, exactly, and that's fine. I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to be like some sort of. How did the War Games get in trouble? I don't remember this. Did they get in trouble because they regenerated a doctor without us seeing who the new doctor is? Because that makes me mad. Did that make you mad, Mike?
Well, that was in the next episode, Devious.
Devious is canon. It is canon.
Shoot it out of a cannon. I don't know. I've never even seen it. Why am I even making bad comments about it?
Where does that first female doctor fit then? Barbara Benedetti.
Barbara Benedetti from Seattle.
Yeah.
Won't people be surprised if Jodie regenerates into her, especially since she's dead? But
and those were all shot on film, so I'm waiting for the Blu-ray releases.
only one was shot on film.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I think was there two made?
The regeneration story. I think there are three. You're right.
You're right. See, I'm just being mean. Sorry, the War Game's not the Doctor Who story. What's the War Game? I'm sorry.
I think Matthew Broderick.
That's called War Game. So
It's just one.
I don't think it's the Matthew Broderick film that Noel's talking about. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Maybe it's something else.
But it killed the conversation, Noel. I hope you're happy. It just destroyed what we're doing over here. Why don't we do this? First of all, one thing I wanted to also show real fast before we headed out was I think some of you may have seen this online. I don't know if this is on the DVDs or Blu-rays, but I thought this was funny. The note for the rap party for Quatermass in the Pit from 1959. This would have been January 26th at 8:45 p.m. This means this is immediately after after they performed it live, that they would have this little rap party. So that's kind of cool.
That's pretty amazing.
That's neat. And also on there, let's see what else on there. If you can't see it, but in the corner it says Bernard. So it might have been for Bernard Wilkie, or maybe it's for Bernard Quatermass for all I know. I don't know. I don't know what's going on around here. Anything else you two want to add to this?
No, I think Mike, you need to go away. You have quite the purchase list there, and watch all of those, and then come back and report to us.
That's true. Well, and of course, I think Remembrance of the Daleks needs a quick mention here in our wrap up, because they mention Quatermass and the Rocket Group, if I'm remembering correctly, or they refer to him by his first name, right?
Yep, and they stop just before getting to the rest of it. And I do say too, and it's been in the comments as well. I mean, to me, Spirit from Space, that's Quatermass II.
Yep.
In so many ways. It's just funny because you don't pick up on that. I didn't pick up until much later because it took me a long time to see Quatermass II. And I remember, just one of those tape trading things, I remember, Robert, that you got Quatermass II, and it was an absolutely brilliant looking copy. It was just, I like it. Yeah, of course it was. Whatever. You drink your wine. It was, but it was really cool because Quatermass Experiment was kind of a dodgy copy. Quatermass in the Pit was, you couldn't get it episodically. And then you had this really nice copy of Quatermass II, and that was really fun to see. And that was before they did the small edits, because if those of you who had those early copies would know that between literally each camera move, there'd be about just a quick blink of black because of how the switchers worked for that, and that had to all be edited for the DVD release. So. It's just too bad that they couldn't just release like either up-resed or something else with that HD Quatermass. I know you've said that before, Robert, and I would agree with that. As extras for the Quatermass in the Pit Blu-ray. Have the up-res of the other two stories.
Of the other two stories.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. Yeah, that would have been cool.
Just keep it all together. Keep it in the family. So. Why don't we end it there? Because I know Robert has stuff going. I'm sure you do too, Mike. I don't know how.
I have a busy social schedule, and so this has been a big sacrifice for me to commit 2 hours to you, Greg. So I mean, it's no problem spending 2 hours with Robert, but for you, Greg, I hope you understand that this.
Whoops. So anyway, let's just kidding.
Hello.
Are you in there?
Can I just point out that this is the final time I will be appearing on television?
Real fast, do you three have any problems with Quatermass was a mixture of film and videotape, whereas the Twilight Zone mainly in the Outer Limits was all made on film? I'd love to know your two thoughts on that.
No, because I was used to Doctor Who, and it was like even as a well, I'd say child, but I mean I was at least 10 or so before I saw Doctor Who for the first time. I mean, I could tell that something was different, even though I didn't know at the time what it was. I could tell, like, oh, this is like these caves of Voga. They look very different than the things I'm seeing on Nerva. It's like, so no, it was very obvious. I have no problem with the cutting between. I mean, I think nowadays the main issue you have is, like, for instance, we're talking about 1984 and whether or not it will include the 35 millimeter inserts. Even when I saw the original restoration that I saw, jumping between the vid-fired studio scenes and, even though it was standard def, those 35 millimeter rescanned inserts, the jump in quality was so significant that it was very jarring. It didn't feel like it flowed. So it'll be interesting to see what they have done.
Michael?
Yeah, no, I would just merely echo what Robert said. You know, having seen so much Doctor Who, yeah, you just the brain gets trained to be okay with that, or at least mine has.
Yeah,
I might have low standards though. I don't know.
Here's the thing. I mean, so I've been working on my next Doctor Who on DVD or VHS video, Trial of a Time Lord, and that's the first story that from then on forward is completely on videotape, apart from a few exceptions, as we know in the past. But to me, that was my favorite part of all BBC television. For some reason, the mix between videotape and film, especially on something like All Creatures Great and Small, when you went out to Yorkshire for the locations and it's on film, and it just, you could hear, they had the Foley artists, and you could hear the sound of people walking on the pebbles and the horses and everything about it. I just loved it. So I actually, even though it probably annoyed the directors to have to do a mix like that, to me, that's BBC television. And to me, that's the nostalgia and love I have for it. And I mean, ITV did it a little bit depending on which network, but generally they would be like, if you like Get Beast, for example, that's all going to be on video, whereas Quatermass is all on film. I love and I embrace the mix of videotape and film. So, and that's how you kill conversations.
Yeah. Well, it's the same reason you don't mind seeing The Wires occasionally on some favorite program that you love watching. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. I wonder what show that would be. Right. I mean, when Toberman picked up a clearly dummy cyber controller and threw him into the controls, his head fell off. Then he gets up with his head back on him. I didn't give one bit of a shit about it because it was Tomb of the Cybermen. And to this day, well, I actually get offended. And Robert knows I cannot stand it when people talk during Doctor Who. I get offended when people laugh at it. I really do. Because it's like, this is, I don't know what you're laughing at because this is all wonderful looking to me, you know, and I know I take it way too seriously.
No, but I'm with you on that. Like, you know, and I guess there's a fine line between laughing with it and taking the piss out of it. Because I feel like all of the hard work that those people put into that, you know, needs to be honored. But since you mentioned Tomb, or since we're talking about it, raise our glasses, I believe, to the 30th anniversary of its recovery.
That would be. That's 92. Yep.
So there we go. Tomb of the Cybermen.
And watch my YouTube video on the VHS of Tomb of the Cybermen.
Yes.
Interesting.
If there's anything you get from this video is to watch this, right? And then Simon wrote, and Simon, I'm not familiar with this. Maybe you two are. And the thing is, it's he brought it up twice, so I figured I'd put it out there. AI 16.9 from 4.3 conversions. AI can soon do very much. Should it be used? And I don't want to. And if we think this is a big conversation, we don't have to get into it. To me, I'm a purist. If you want to have something like this released out there, as long as the original is still available, that's all I really care about.
I'm more of a true purist in that I want all of the image that was recorded, the original image that was recorded, released. And I think you may remember this, Greg. I think I told you about it. Like, there was recently, they were doing new HD scans for Warner Archive, oddly enough, for all of the Linda Carter Wonder Woman series.
Yeah.
And they were going to release them all in 16.9 because there's the original images that had been presented in when they were originally broadcast had been cropped significantly. And there was a huge outcry from the fandom, including some people that we know, to only release them in the original images, all in 4.3. And to do that, we ended up with a lot less picture. And I would be like, I don't care if it's 16.9. I don't care if it has black bars on the sides or top. I just want to see all the image that was recorded.
Yep.
And I mean, many of the movies, it still like really boggles my mind. You know, the whole thing about letterbox movies being released all started with the Laserdisc movement, and people considered, okay, now the image is crisp enough, clear enough that we can release a 2.35 image in standard def, and people will be able to see it clear enough. But you have people complaining about the black bars at the top and the bottom, and then you explain to them, but you get like to see picture that you wouldn't get to see in a 4.3 image, but would be typically pan and scanned in that. But nowadays, a lot of the movies that are being shot in open matte, specifically so that they have versions that they crop to release in the theater, but that the director, it's not that the director is saying, I don't want this other part of the image seen. They are recording it literally so that there's a full 16:9 version to release on television. But when they come out on physical media or streaming, they're only the theatrical release. It's not that there's images in both versions that are missing parts of the picture. And I'm like, not for that. I want like everything that was recorded.
Yes. Well, and this is what I've been holding back. Nerdly pleasures. May I call you nerd, please? So I guess the Day of the Triffids Blu-ray is a trigger for those who don't know, and I did a video on it. The video sequences are filmized. Those have been up-res to HD, and they rescan the film to be, for HD, and it's been regraded. The whole thing has been regraded. It looks really nice. For purists like myself, I would love to be able to see the video sequences look like video, and they don't currently. Does that mean that I hate it? Absolutely not. But I do wish that we would have the option, because they could have easily fit two versions onto the disc, one being the episodic as broadcast, but with upgraded and nice effects, as well as kind of their own interpretation of the story, which I think would have been really cool too. But here's the thing. Your mileage may vary, right? Because, for example, Only Fools and Horses, Jolly Boy's Outing. It's one of my favorite episodes of Only Fools and Horses. They updated that. They kept the sequences as video, but they added about 4.5 minutes of content to it. That's not as broadcast. But am I upset about that? No, because it doesn't mean as much to me as some of these other shows. So that's why I mean your mileage may vary on it. And I certainly wouldn't be like, I can't. Some people, we won't name names. There's none of us on here. But there are some people who, when it comes to Doctor Who in particular, they're such purists that if there's like a frame that is obviously different than broadcast version, they won't watch it. I'm not going to be that way. I'm not going to be about that way of Doctor Who either. But it would be nice to not totally just disregard that. And to me, that's a big error to do it that way. But the ARC, who restored it, they're 100% behind what they did, and so be it. Good for them. I mean,
and Greg, you and I we've talked about that. And yes, I mean, as you know, there are plenty of times when I get a disc and I don't like it, and so I just fix it myself.
Yes.
To make it, and it would be easy enough to vidfire the video sequences and make them move interlaced together and stuff.
Yes.
But it's like a lowdown on the list of projects to do. But what I did want to say is like what you're talking about is very similar to what they ended up doing with the Woman in Black, where they released they did a full restoration in 4:3, but then they said, okay, we're also going to release and make available to you a version that's 16:9, and you can choose what you want to watch.
Absolutely. And that, once again, that's Network, and they've been doing such amazing things. I do wish Network would have done some more atmospheric grading to their 16:9 version, but that's a minor thing. I mean, but they're giving you options. Absolutely, they are. Ian had talked about animations, which I won't get into because we should just do a discussion on that sometime. Maybe when Abominable Snowman comes out, we can do a discussion about animations in general. He just says
we should wait for the Adam animation.
You're a monster. Yeah, well, I don't know anything about that. I was removed from that project. So Doctor Who episodes, archive episodes look way better now than when I first saw them in 1960s with my parents' TV. The thing about Ian is that he has seen all Doctor Who. You have seen everything, and that's pretty amazing. My hat's off to you, sir. Just love to have you on sometime if you'd want to come on, and we can just talk about experiencing Doctor Who, watching it. I actually said to somebody, because there's that idea of astral projection, when you sleep at night, you could leave your body. And I thought to myself, what if you go back in time? And friend Christy, she said to me, well, what would you do with it? And I just told her, and I'm not kidding, I hate to say it, I said, I'd go back and watch Doctor Who episodes that are missing. And she said, she just stopped and stared at me like, are you effing kidding me? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not kidding. Unfortunately, I'd go back and watch these. And I don't know, Ian. I think it's still being worked on. I really don't know. I originally was on it, and maybe next time, because I shared a couple of months ago, I shared some animation characters for Reign of Terror. We had one for Adam Adamant when I was still on the project, which is in the same vein as that. So you may not have liked what you saw for Reign of Terror, but I know that other people are working on that. I don't know if they still are or not, but yeah, that was a project that I just many things, because I originally was producing that with Chris. I stepped away from that, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. And then Ian is, let's see, I missed Marco Polo. So, lame. Then you're not going to be on my show.
Uninvited.
Let's see. Greg is not a meddling monk. Yeah. No, I won't change history. I just want to watch it on BBC One. Okay. And then so with that being said, gentlemen, I just want to say on April 2nd, we're going to have Jazz Wiseman on. We're going to be talking about the Avengers. We're talking about the restoration of the Avengers. He worked with Cannell along with Alan to do the work on the episodes. It's an interesting story. It will be a very interesting story. But I want to have Jazz on. We're going to have Jazz on a couple times. One time to talk about the Avengers, and the other to talk about ITC series, because I want to talk about the Avengers. I do not want to miss Jazz's amazing knowledge, and he's written books. I have a bunch of them that we're gonna, once again, I'm just gonna show to the camera to show that I'm just like all of you. I'm cool too, and there's a lot of cool stuff, and we're gonna have him on a couple times. So I'm excited for that. Unfortunately, Mike, that means you're not gonna be on. So as you can see, I'm really upset about that.
Why must you do this to me, Greg? Publicly humiliating me like this.
Because I have low self-esteem and it makes me feel good. But you know what I'd like to do? If you're all up for it, I'd like to also do some of these for like when whatever that Sea Devils episode is, when that comes on, maybe some like a week afterwards, we can do kind of a discussion about what we thought of it, if you're all up for it. And I don't care if people have different opinions on that era, just be respectful of it. That's all I ask. That's all. I mean, everyone should have a right to like whatever they want. Also, not what you like, but don't be a jerk about it. That's all. Mike.
Don't be a Greg about it.
Wow. Wow, that's hurtful. That's unnecessary too. I don't. After everything.
If you were to conduct a poll, I think people would be siding with me, Greg.
About what?
Thank you. Exactly. Great show today, guys, except for Mike. Your input and knowledge has been enjoyable. Thank you, Chuck. Really appreciate it. And this is, I think what he's saying here, I know you probably think he's saying that that's when Doctor Who is going to air, but I think that's when your comeuppance is going to happen, when the summoning will begin for you, Mike.
So I better lay low on that day.
That's the day of reckoning. So just know that. Robert, do you have anything to add before I call this a day? Because I know you need to get going here soon. So
no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it sounds like they have arisen. The Sea Devils have arisen. Easter Sunday's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I might be traveling at that point, but I can still do something, I'm sure. So, alrighty. Well, thank you all so very much for joining us. Hopefully that this was enjoyable to some people. And, join me on April 2nd. All three of us will be back at some point chatting and having a roundtable discussion, and hope you'll join us. So, Mike, Robert, thank you very much for all this.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. Thank you. And we will talk to you all soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Boo.